Hey, welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. Um, got a got a little bit to talk to you about today about getting ready for a depression. First off, I want to throw in a couple of things. Yesterday, I put up the first uh, video on Patreon on lessons from the Mafia, which I explain as I did a little bit on here. I'm using that term which is misused by most people. I'm using that term for now. I will gradually. I want to get away from that term, but most people won't know what I'm talking about if I simply say the tradition or the old tradition. So it's just a handy term to use for now. Um, but we'll kind of be progressing in that. And yesterday I covered quite a bit about the original structure, the original formation of Sicilian or Italian organized crime, as they call it. Uh, you know, Many people look at it as organized crime. Maybe many people don't. And as I go through the series, I'll be showing how those different, or explaining how those different viewpoints developed and how they coincide and how they conflict and things like that. And like most things in the world, it's kind of how you view it, and many people view it from a position of limited information, and of course how it's skewed in the media and how it's skewed by the government and things like that. And I think most of you all are wise enough to understand that what's covered in the media ain't exactly so, isn't that right? Now some of it is, but most of it's not. And so yesterday, I covered quite a bit on the family structure, how these families came together, the reason that they did. I talked a little bit about my own family. Um, so for any of you who are interested in that, it's over on Patreon. I'll probably be shooting a second one today, if not today, tomorrow morning. Kind of depends on how today goes. But I had, and I concentrated on the importance of family, the family circles, the concentric circles made up of nuclear family, secondary family, satellite family, friends, things like that, and how that's so important in giving um, strength and solidarity and stability to a group of people. Excuse me. In changing times, in times that can be very um, uh, threatening, right? Very uncertain. So I did have a few people, and I'll take just a minute here and talk about this. I had a few people, and I've had other people in the past ask me how I feel about my opinion on certain so-called mafia movies, um, and they're good questions because I think this is where most people get their information about these things, and so they lose the more important lessons. So first one, um, I'll talk about just a few movies, then I'll move on to the next thing. The first one that everybody comes up, well, first one that most people come up with is The Godfather. I'll get back to that. Okay. Uh, what was that? What was that stupid one? Goodfellas. Okay, Goodfellas. Um, that may have been how it was in certain areas of New York or back east at a certain time. If that was in the 70s and 80s and things, I don't know. I wasn't there, and I wasn't in 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 that. So I don't know if anybody had acted like that. I would be very surprised. The movie is full of BS. Uh, what's the guy's name who made it? Scorsese. Every time that he and De Niro and Pesci get together and they think they're going to make a big mob movie, most of the people that know what they're talking about are just going to be shaking their heads. I mean, the behavior in that is just beyond what would have been accepted or acceptable. There was one scene in there that was kind of funny, and I'm sure it impressed a lot of people. But the same thing kind of happened to me one time, and so I'll explain it, and I'll explain the difference of how it really was. The scene is if you remember when what was it, Henry Hill. Now Henry Hill was a nobody, and they made him up to be some big deal in this movie. I don't know how that came about, but they had this scene to where he's taking some girl that he likes. I think he ended up marrying her. I don't know. I watched the movie once, and that was all I could take it. Uh, he took his date to a restaurant, and when they saw him come in, he was such an important guy. You know, the movie makes it look like that they brought a special table out, and they set up a table right in the middle of the crowd up by the stage, and it shows how he's all accepted and being taken care of, and he's shaking hands, and and she's getting all impressed and things like that. I don't, maybe things like that happened in some areas. But I tell you something that happened to me one time, and this is how it would have been handled by or thought about by most people that I know. Uh, I had made arrangements. I'd let a club owner know that I was going to bring in that I was bringing in the the woman I was dating at the time and another couple. We were going to come into the club, see the show, and asked him for a particular table. He said he'd take care of it, and I told him what time I was going to come in. So we got there, and we walked in the door, and he looked up, and he happened to be back by the bar, and he looked up and he saw me, and his face just went, not white, but his face, you could tell, he said he had forgotten. He had forgotten all about it. Well, okay, these things happen, and he could have set us over, in a corner somewhere. I wouldn't have been happy about it, but it would have been better than what happened. And what he did is he sent a couple of his guys over. He told the people who were sitting at the table that I wanted, that was right up, fairly close to the stage. He sent them over there, and they made these people get up, hustled them back through the crowd, and of course they didn't know what was going on. They were offended, they were upset, and they didn't really know what kind of place they were in, and so they kind of made an issue about it, and it became a big deal. So the entire room was watching and wondering what the heck was going on, and then they came, and they came and escorted us to the table and changed the tablecloth and all the settings and everything, and it was, I was ticked because I just wanted to go in and sit down, and nobody paid any attention, and now here I was, everybody in a whole stinking place watching me walk through a crowd, this big production being made, and here I'm sitting at a table that these poor tourists, I mean that in the sense they probably weren't from out of town, but they weren't regulars in a place like that. That these poor people, through no fault of their own, had been jumped out of this table and kind of abused in my case. Well, I wasn't happy about that at all, and so the evening was not the nice, relaxing evening. It didn't make me feel important. It made me feel uncomfortable. I didn't like those people being bounced. That's not right. And so he made a mistake. So, buy me a round of drinks or something like that and sit me in the corner and let us enjoy a nice quiet evening like we had wanted to. So that's more like, what the attitude would have been in that scene. Now, I didn't know those guys. I wasn't back east. I don't know, maybe things were done differently back there. I don't know. So that's just my opinion on that. So Goodfellas, stupid movie. Don't take your information from that. Another one was Casino, as I mentioned on the video on Patreon. Even stupider movie. The people never would have acted like that. It's a case. Actually, the case that was surrounding this is one that I'm familiar with because it started here in Kansas City. It had to do with Teamsters pension funds and skimming off casinos, and there was a big investigation called Operation Strawman. And if you're ever, if you're interested in any of that, you can. I'm sure it's on all over the web. I don't know, but I'm familiar with a lot of that in there, and none of what I'm familiar with was represented even close to being, to reality in the movie. Um, yeah, and yet people come away with, oh man, did you see that? And they make jokes about it. Wasn't like that a bit. One recent one that came out was called The Irishman, which was about a guy named Frank Sheeran. Again, played by De Niro. I think this was another Scorsese thing. Like I said, I don't pay real close attention to these things, but it had De Niro and it had Pesci, and these are old guys now. Uh, there was no way, De Niro was not a believable Sheeran, and the whole movie was stupid. It was about a case over that very few people know about. Nobody now cares about Jimmy Hoffa. This is in the past. People back 30 years ago. Yeah, okay, Jimmy Hoffa, but nobody cares about him now. I don't know why they decided to come up with this movie. Uh, but Frank Sheeran didn't kill Hoffa, and Frank Sheeran didn't kill who was the other guy that they had killing Joey Gallo. These things just didn't happen. So they tried to make the ultimate mob movie just because a couple of old guys who had been in previous mob movies were going to be in it, thinking that it'd be a big deal, and it's just another misleading situation. The one movie that is good is The Godfather, Godfather 1. There are some things in there that, a lot of people wouldn't understand, but as close as any, it came to describing the old ways, the original ways. Now, it started kind of, it showed how the original people came over from Sicily. It got into a little bit. If you don't know about the background, you won't understand a lot of it. But still, it's the best movie out there for that. It does address a lot of the principles and the values. Now, as far as you know, Corleone's family being the dysfunctional family that it was, that's not believable. Families like that were not dysfunctional. Yeah, you had a hothead here and there, and but no, a family like that, it would be very, very well controlled, very and controlled with love. To be honest, not with force and not with threats or anything like that. But the families were thought to be, almost holy, and you would not see the kind of dysfunction in a family back then that you saw in the movie The Godfather. Still, there were a lot of good lessons in it. So if you want a movie that shows you a little bit about that, The Godfather is a pretty good one. Um, and I said over on the other, there's some books if you're interested in these kinds of things. Joe Bonanno wrote one called The Man of Honor. His son Bill wrote one called Bound by Honor. And Sammy Gravano, they called Sammy the Bull. He wrote one called Underboss. He was Gotti's underboss. And that's a lot of people, rag on him, but there's a lot of, it'll give you good insight. So if you're interested in that, uh, those are good resources, and I'll continue to doing the series over on Patreon. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and join me over there. The other thing was, I'll just throw in this, that I spoke yesterday. I haven't been out a lot lately, but I spoke yesterday with a group of people, a couple of doctors and a couple of nurses, who just a few weeks ago, when I was trying to explain how serious this COVID stuff was, were kind of dismissing it. I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried. I don't care. Well, and last night they're scared. They are just, they're starting to get frantic. So whatever that says, we'll leave that for now. The main point of this today is how to get ready for a depression. I've talked a little bit about this before, but I do want to address it again because people have asked me questions. Um, if a depression is coming, what do you do starting right now to get ready for it? Number one, I said you keep your job. If you can pick up extra work, you do. You start stacking your cash. But more importantly, and I told stories about my grandfather and how he approached this during the Great Depression. I did that over on Patreon. Start developing additional income streams. I'll tell you just a couple of things that I do. I have several businesses. I don't always promote them all the time. I don't work them all the time, but I keep them active in case I want to. One, I have a landscape and security lighting company. I have another specialty lighting company. I have another security company. And then, of course, I do some things under integrative preparedness, which is kind of an umbrella preparedness business. Um, Most of the time, I don't do much with those others. I'm going to start doing some with those others. And the things that they have in common are that they either appeal to people with disposable income, meaning the specialty lighting is for people who, they make good money. They do well, and they're not usually hit during hard times. And even if some are, there's enough out there that aren't going to be, and they're gonna want these services. And so, even though I haven't stayed strong in those markets much, I'll be able to go in and get whatever piece I want to when I want to. It's just a matter of knowing people and doing a good job and making people happy. That's what business is all about. I've said before that if you can do what other people can't do, don't want to do, or afraid to do, you're always going to have work. So those are things to keep in mind. The other things, so these things are fairly depression proof. They're aimed at people who have disposable income, extra money, and as things get a little more dicey, if we do go into a depression, you're going to see crime rise greatly. And so security, lighting, the need for that is going to increase. And one of the reasons that I will increase these is if there are people in my circles, in my world, that need additional money, additional work. I don't really have time. The reason I don't keep them up too active is I just don't have time for it. I have other things to do. I have other interests, and but these are alive so that if I have friends, say, who lose a job or need more money or whatever like that, all I have to do is start putting the word out that these things are these services we can get done for them, and we're going to get some business, and those people in my circle are going to have some work and some money coming in. And this is kind of what we were talking about, or I was talking about yesterday on Patreon, is that your circles are supportive of each other. So, in my advice to you is, think about what kinds of things can you do that would bring additional income streams toward you. Are you good at can you do basic repair work around the house? People are always going to need their houses repaired, and as they make less money and as the economy comes down, they're not going to want to pay the prices of these big companies and what they pay. They're not going to pay a plumber to come fix a leaky faucet. If they don't know how to do it, they'll probably give you $100 or $50 to come fix their leaky faucet if that's something that you can do. And it doesn't take but a few of those a day as the word gets out. And believe me, you do some work for one person, and they know a bunch of people that need these things. And you do a few of those jobs a day, and you're going to be able to keep yourself afloat. And if you want to build it up from there, you can. It's just a matter of how much smarts you got, how much energy you got, and how much work you're willing to put into it. So this is my advice for right now. Think about what you can do that people might need. Even if you got a job right now, I would suggest that you start thinking about it, and be ready to fill that role when the time comes and if you need to do it. So Kelly's making some omelets in there, and from the smell of things, mine's about ready. So I'm going to let you go and wish you all a good day. Remember, I'll probably be putting up another lessons from the Mafia over there on Patreon either later today or tomorrow. So join us over there if you'd like. But remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. And have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.